ISO FileMaker Magazine, the professional's resource for FileMaker know-how.
Hey there, this is Matt Petrowski for ISO FileMaker Magazine, and in this video we're taking a look at FileMaker Reporting fundamentals. These are the things that you need to know if you want to build pretty much any type of report. Let's take a look at my desktop. All right, thanks for joining me here on my desktop. We've got a web page, and I'm simply at a website called data.gov. And in the United States, it's just a place where the federal government accumulates data. Now, I'm doing this because it provides me with an opportunity to show you how to get both data in and then how to report based on that data. So what we're using right here is we are using the monthly page views to cdc.gov. And as all of us know, we've recently had a global pandemic, and we can see if those numbers went up or not. But right now what we get some basic data. I've done the download. I won't walk you through that. We can see right here that we've got the file as a CSV, comma separated value file. Now, if I hit the spacebar here on the Macintosh, we get some data that comes up, and we can sort of preview this data. On Windows, I don't know how you would preview this data other than open it in a text editor. But what I'm interested in is the fact that I don't always have to enter in the names of fields. If I'm coming from a comma separated value file or an Excel spreadsheet, many times the names of fields is already done for us. So we don't necessarily have to create these names in a blank FileMaker database. We can actually just use the data itself if it already has column headers and have FileMaker do the work. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to drag this on top of FileMaker, and this will work with a shortcut on Windows or a shortcut on the Macintosh, or an alias as they call them. And as I drag this, what we have is FileMaker automatically comes up with a window where FileMaker wants to now convert this. Now, we can, FileMaker adds in a special word. You can see right there, it adds in the word converted, and we don't want that word. We actually want to call this whatever we want in terms of the file. Now, the interesting thing about FileMaker is whatever the name of the file is, typically when you create a new file, then FileMaker automatically creates one table for you, and that initial table has the same name as the name that you give the file. In this case, I don't know what it might be the case. We'll see what happens here. I'm just going to call this CDC views just for fun. Now, FileMaker is going to come up with our import dialog. I'll make this a little bit smaller so we can see on screen. What we can do is over here on this side, we get to choose whether we use things as field names right there or whether we use them as data. Now, I can skip to any given row when I import this by simply clicking here and moving through the data. I also get to preview the data quite clearly in this area. So I'm going to move all the way back to the row number 1. And for this one, I'm going to say use as field names. And what we'll see is FileMaker automatically switched over here, and it's going to map all of these. Now we can see that there is this target within the file. So we're coming from the CSV file into this file, and we can name this whatever we want. In this case, I'm going to name the same name, CDC. Actually, I'll just call it CDC data. And we will click convert right there. It will bring everything in. Now, this is actually a great technique if you need to, let's say you have an Excel spreadsheet that has 30 or 50 rows of data. You do not have to take the time to ever repeat type something into FileMaker if you're able to get FileMaker to do the work. So many times I will even do this temporarily. Then I will go up to the manage and then go to the database. And I will select that. And so with this here, if I had a separate FileMaker file, I can in fact just select all of these fields, click on the copy option that we have in this dialog, and then just go paste these fields into my actual FileMaker database. So use FileMaker's willingness to convert a file for you, even if it's just to get the names of fields. So for the rest of this video, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be taking a look at converting this into a report, taking this raw data that we have here on screen and actually making sense of it and talking about all the aspects that lets us put things in a very clear format ready for us to generate a report. Okay, so let's turn this data into a report that will visually make sense to us and be appealing, and we'll discuss all the aspects of reporting as we go across this solution. Now, one of the things that I'm going to do is I'm going to make a notes field. So we're going to make the assumption that, let's say for this month of October in 2003, there were this many page views and maybe those page views were lower and we want to add a month field. Now there's a couple of ways you can do this in FileMaker. You can always click here in this table view. You can click right here and add a field. You can also always go up to the very familiar Manage Database. And in that area, we can always add a field right here. But just for fun, I'm going to click on the little plus right here because I already have the view, and I will just call this Notes. I don't need to change the field type, but if I did, I would select on the little arrow here, and then I would be able to choose something like going to the field, and then going over to the field type. And as we can see, I could choose to change this to whatever field type I want right here in Table View. So with that notes, we'll take a look at that a little bit later and see how it impacts our report in terms of what's going on. But what we need to do right now is recognize what FileMaker has done for us, which if we go into the Manage and then go to the Layouts area, what we're going to see is that FileMaker has actually created two different layouts for us, Layout 1 and Layout 2. Now, Layout 2 is the conversion of the data. And I don't know why FileMaker does this, but they do. FileMaker typically assumes that in any solution, you at least are going to start with one layout. You need something that you're going to see. And for the most part, this layout is in what they call Form View. We have three different views we have in FileMaker. They are right here represented. We've got Form View, we've got List View, and then we've got Table View. So FileMaker created a Form View for us, and we are looking at our data in a table view. So we're going to take advantage of this layout. Otherwise, what we would normally do is with this dialog closed, we would go into layout mode by switching into layout mode under our view menu. And in layout mode, we would then have the opportunity under the layouts menu to make a new layout or report. Well, in this case, we don't need to do that. We're just going to work with the one that FileMaker has. Now, going back into browse mode with Command or Control B, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do something that usually is advantageous when you are developing anything and you need to see the raw data at the same time that you want to see a report. And that is I'm going to head up to the new window and create a new window right here. Now, you're going to see on my copy of FileMaker that I do have some keys assigned that are not in your copy of FileMaker, at least if you're on a Mac. I controlled these keys within the system preferences on the Macintosh under the keyboard setting. And on Windows, I believe there's a mapping for a lot of different key commands. So I have key commands assigned to a variety of things. So on this particular view, this one is already on layout 2. I'm going to switch this one to layout number 1. I'm also going to go into layout mode, and then I'm going to right click. There's always multiple ways to do things in FileMaker. I could go up to the layout and choose the layout setup from the menu right up here, but you can also access this same thing directly on the layout by doing a context click and just right clicking. So right clicking on the layout, I get the exact same setup right there, and I'm simply going to name this one Report. Or name it whatever makes sense to your solution. So with these two windows now, I'm able to use a little snap. I know on Windows you can do this, but on the Macintosh, I believe I have a, I forget what the function is, but there's a number of these you can search on the Macintosh store and be able to put things side by side. And over here, I'll go into browse mode and into layout mode here. Well, actually, that one's in browse mode. I should have done this one in browse mode. That's no problem. We'll just do it again. All right, so we have a lot of data, and the way that a report works is it essentially works on sorting. But your sorting can actually use as many different values as you want. So let's take a look at the sorting as I use Command or Control S, and we'll look at this relative to our data. We'll zoom in a little bit here. All right, so relative to our data, we have months, notes, page views, page visits, sort, and year. Now, quite clearly in this report, we are going to want to sort based on the year, but if we also want to break it down based on the month, then we are going to be able to do that. So the great thing about sorting is you can have as many different sorts as you want on a report. Now, the sorts are going to control how the data is displayed, and that's going to be through FileMaker's parts. FileMaker has multiple different layout parts when it comes to reporting, and we're going to see those. But first, let's figure out what is the order in which we want to see the data? Well, what makes sense to me is first, let's sort it by year. So numerically, 2003 is obviously going to come before 2013. Then within that year, I'm going to want to sort based on the month. Now, these two will give me pretty clearly what I want, but we need to know that sorting is always relative to the field type. So I don't have it on screen right here. I'm going to zoom out, and then we're going to zoom in all the way over here so that we can see it. When we look and consider the month, we need to know that the field type of this month is going to be text. We also need to be aware that when we imported this data, not all data comes in as you expect. For example, the year that we have here, we need to check the field type that FileMaker actually made this. In fact, importing CSV, I believe FileMaker most of the time imports all columns as text. So if we want this to sort correctly, we're going to need to convert and make this an actual number field, which we'll go ahead and do. But when it comes to sorting, if we sort based on the month name that came in, that month is going to sort alphabetical because it's text and because A comes before O and S and so forth. So we'll have a completely out of order sort in terms of what's going on. Now, in the case of this data, what happened is it actually came in where in order to sort, they did include a sort field. And that sort field, its only purpose is to sort things using a numerical value that simply maps to the actual month. We can see that January represents number 1, February number 2, and March number 3, and so on. So we can take advantage of that sort field if we want to, but there's also another way that we can sort within FileMaker by giving an explicit list of the values that we want sorted in an explicit order. And we'll take a look at that. So for right now, what we'll do is we'll go ahead and click sort. We can see that we're getting the sort that we want so far, but again, we need to double check that year. So I'm going to bring up the Manage Database, go into that table by double clicking, and as I suspected, when we imported the data, the year did not come in as a number. So we are going to take the time and switch that to a number, click the change button right there, and make sure that it sorts the way that we want. This will apply to any imported data that you want to apply where it needs to be set to a date and all kinds of different things. So we know that that one's going to be good. If we sort by the sort, we will get what we want in terms of the data. So let's go ahead and go into our sort again with a Command or Control S. Let's take that month off, and then let's put our sort on and just make sure that the data is happening in the order that we want. So it looks like, starting out here, what we had is we only started in October, but as we scroll down, we want to make sure that we get our values, and we are not getting the correct values right here. Why is that? Because the sort field came in as text. This is so important, and it's why I'm going through this, is when you don't get the results that you want within FileMaker, it's usually not a problem of the data. It's usually a problem up here. It is us, the operators. So as text, 1, 10, 11, 12, then 2 is actually sorted in the right way. We need to convert this sort into a number. So we can right click or click right here, go to our field, set our field type to a number. That's the easiest way to do that. And now when we get our sort, we can see right there on 2004, we're getting 1, 2, 3, and it's January, February, March, April. Perfect. What is our alternative to sorting? Well, we can use a value list, but in FileMaker, our value lists are somewhat limited, but only to the extent that if we know the fixed values that we want, then we're going to be able to work with those. Now, here's another trick. As I pull this window off to the side, we go up to FileMaker's Manage, and we go to the value lists, where we could take the time to create a new value list, which I'll click on New, and I will type in month names. And here we have custom values. So if we simply emulate this, we could put in January and so forth, and then type February and February. That's right there. February, always the difficult one to spell. But why do I want to take the time to do that? That data is already typed in right here. Is it possible for me to get that data out? I believe it is. So we're going to do that really quickly here. I'm going to show you how we might be able to do that. With this data already in my database, I'm just going to go up to the File menu, and I'm going to choose, I'm actually hiding it, the Export Records option. Now, I have no reason to export the records right now, but what we're going to do is we're going to quickly sort this by month. So I'm going to sort this. I'll clear all of my values and sort by the actual month name and just click those sorted. So it's going to group them, all my Aprils, March, Mays, so on and so forth. Now I'm going to go to the export and export those records. And I'm going to call them month names. Now, why am I doing all of this? This is just a step that is born out of laziness. I could take the time to type things. It's really only 12 values, but I'm doing this to show you that if the data already exists, take the time and you can save a lot of time, especially when you're working with large sets of data. Now, FileMaker's two different text format types are comma separated and tab separated. We could use FileMaker's merge, but for the most part, we're just going to go with tab separated because all we're exporting is going to be that one value, the month name. So we're going to save that here, and we're going to put in the month, and we have this option that says group by. So when we click this, what we should get as an output is hopefully a file that has just those names. So we export that, and let's go take a look at what we got. We go over here, bring my Finder value on screen. Let's see if my tabs, it will not show me, but that's no big deal. Here, I'm showing the extension of my file. If you're a developer, it always pays dividends to show your extension. Otherwise, you can always right-click on Windows, choose the properties, or on the Macintosh, choose Get Info. But because I'm showing the extensions, I can just change this to CSV, just so I can take a look at the file using the quick view. And lo and behold, there I have all of the values, the singular values, because I choose that group by, and I can simply now just copy these. So I can put these into a, let me open this with a program called Text Edit here, just so we can get those values out. There they are. I'm lazy. I don't want to copy them. FileMaker, of course, does not have them in a sorted order. Well, I might as well show you how I would deal with this. There is a program that I use. Actually, many text editors will actually allow you to sort. I'll bring this window on screen. This is just a little program called Vim, where I can put these in. I will actually type them in and paste them because this program allows me to sort this data. This is a little bit of a tangent that I'm going on here, but I'm going to, you can see right here what I'm doing is, in Vim, I can pass a command to this program to do what I want. And many other programs will do this. Actually, do I need to select all of that, then pass it in? I believe I do. Let's do... Oh, it is sorting it. It's sorting it based on the values of A, B, C, D, E, F, G, which is actually not what I want because I want them in the right order. So tangent aside, we'll close this. Sometimes you do. And again, using an external program will save you the time of sorting. Here in FileMaker, we're going to go back to that value list, and we're going to be able to sort based on that. We'll go back into the month names. I will select everything here, and I'm just going to need to manually drag those around, which I will do. All right, with all of those sorted, we can see that this being such a small list, again, I could have just typed these in. But I wanted to show you that because there are times where you're working with very large data sets that maybe have, thousands of records, and you just want to get those values out. I'm showing you how to use FileMaker to get the data out so that you don't actually have to type those values. You can use the export just on one single field, and as long as it's sorted, you can then group by that and get all of those singular values out. So that's why I showed you. Again, this case, I would simply have just typed them. But now when we go into the sort, if we did not have this sort value provided by the data, we would be able to sort by the month using that actual value list. heading into the sort and going back to our original situation where we needed to sort first by the year and then we wanted to sort it by the month. When we select the month, what we do get is we get this additional option right here of custom order based on value list. So you can see by checking this, that value list, which depending on the order I put the values in, which I did put them in correct month order, that will now control the data in the same way that the sort value did. Now, sometimes you don't think about putting the sort value in, but you can see right here we're getting the exact same result. We have the year, and then 2005 and so forth. Here we have January, and then we have 1 through 10 or 1 through 12 for all of the months. In this particular case, it is sorting based on the text values using the value list, or alternatively, we can use a literal sort value. Many times in your database systems, you do need to add that sort value. So now that we have the data in the proper format, we can actually focus on the report itself. Now, in this case, this form view, which started out as a form, we are going to need to switch to a list view. That's because we're going to be looking at the data as a list in order to print the form. Many times you do need a form view, but in this situation, we're going to be using sub-summary parts in order to get summary values and adding some summary fields so that we get the type of report output that we want. All right, so let's generate our report. We have our data in the right order, and I'm going to break this off and take this window out to the side such that when we go into layout view, what happens with FileMaker is it now draws these sidebars on the sides over here. And so having it anchored to the side of the window doesn't benefit us too much. So if you're going to be doing a report, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of all of these fields, start with a blank slate. I'm working in a copy of FileMaker 19 here. You, of course, are going to need to set the report to whatever dimensions you need to work in. Now, there's a couple of ways that you can change the dimensions in FileMaker. We can see over here, when we go to, let's zoom in right here, when we go to this area in what's called the inspector, we have this position tab with the position sub area. Now, the measurement system that's used right here is currently set to points, and it defaulted to the point system on this new file that I created. But we want to use whatever's respective of our current locale. So we click here and we can see that it switches to inches for the US, or if you're in Europe or a country that supports metric, then we have centimeters. So there's only those three. We have inches, points, and centimeters, and that's how you're going to change this. So in my case, I would be able to set my report to a width that is exactly what I want, so 8.5. And it's going to resize that. Now there's one other way, because I like to always show you all the different ways in FileMaker to do things, or as many as possible. Under the View menu, we have an option to view rulers. And when we turn those on, it's really helpful when it comes to reporting, especially in terms of lining things up. Now, this is the second area right here where you can click to change the measurement system. So I can click here and it goes to centimeters. Now it goes to points, also pixels relatively, and now we have inches. So with this here, we can see that we now have our measurement system and we can put things exactly where we want on the report. The next thing we need to be aware of when it comes to reporting are the parts. FileMaker's parts, it used to start out that FileMaker by default would have a header at the top, and then the very next part would be a body. Now, the parts themselves are all relative to what you're going to be doing on screen and where that screen is going to be viewed. In the case of a mobile application, the top navigation is a part that in particular does not scale when you pinch and zoom on a mobile application, and that's why FileMaker probably changed it from the header part. We can always double-click any given part, and it will bring up FileMaker's part definition dialog box. This is where we can see all of the individual parts. So let's talk about what these parts do. Top navigation, usually used for mobile. A title header, that is a part that will only show on the very first page of a printed report. A header, that will actually show at the top of every page of a printed report. A leading grand summary, when using summary fields, will start at the beginning of any report that is broken down on individual sub-summary parts, which we're going to see here. The body, a critical part that must be in any FileMaker layout if you're going to be showing data. The body is the one part that absolutely must be there. Sub-summary when sorted by. This is the magic FileMaker part that allows you to print any type of report that breaks down data according to groups. And when we select this, when we add this part, we'll see that you can select from any of the pieces of data that you have. Now, the key to this one part is that you get a total of 2 for any given value. So in other words, if I want to show a sub-summary or the month, I can only do it twice, once above and once below, we will see, for any given field. Our trailing grand summary will show after all summary parts. Our footer will be on the bottom of every given page, and a title footer will be at the very last page of a printed report. And finally, bottom navigation will be on every layout and is typically used for mobile. So in this case, we are going to switch our top part to a header here because that's going to be something that I want on every page. If I wanted the title header, then I could go ahead and create one of those. But in this case, we're just going to create a super simple report. Now, down at the bottom, as we can see, we've got all of these different options. Now, all of these different options are pretty self-explanatory based on the parts that you're working with. For right now, we don't want any of those options. We're just going to say this is our header, and I am going to go over here and make this a white part just because we're dealing with a report. Now, the body is going to be our data, of course, and we are going to need that data into this. So we're going to switch over to our fields, and we are going to drag in the fields that we want. Sort is not something we're interested in. Month, year, and then our page views and page visits, and I'll even put in my notes. When we drag these out, of course, down at the bottom of the layout, we have the ability to have the field placement. Because I'm going horizontal, I do not want the option of them vertical. I will place them horizontal, and I do not want any labels on these currently, so I will select this option so that I don't get any labels, and all of these can stay just standard edit box. In fact, we don't even have to put the fields themselves on the layout that is the report because users typically are not interacting with a report, and we'll see what the option is to do that. But for the most part, we'll just get the fields on the layout. Now, as you can see, the fields that are coming in, they are not in a very report-friendly format. So we typically want to create a style in the styling area or in the design area that we have here and style these a little bit more simply. I'm going to take off their corner radius, turn off their bounding boxes, and I'm just going to name them as a new value right here. And I'll, of course, need to select any one of those. I had 5 of them selected before I'm going to save my style. And I'm going to save my style as a new style, and that comes up off screen, and I'm just going to call this report fields. And we'll say OK. And so now I'm going to be able to modify those. And of course, here it's red, and I've got the little star, so I'm going to go ahead and save the changes to this theme, which actually doesn't save it to the original theme. It created a copy and kept the same name. We can always see that when we click on our styles by clicking right here. And when it comes up, we can see that we have an Apex blue, but then we also have an Apex blue that's named as custom. So FileMaker did make a copy of the theme, and it just kept the same name. So a little bit confusing there, but that's what we need to know. So with that, what I'm going to do is we'll select all of these fields. We'll go ahead and make sure that we use our report fields option and get all of those converted. So we're going to put these on our report. We'll put the body and the year, or the month and the year. First, we'll put the year, then we'll put our month, and then we'll put our page views, and then we will put our page visits. Which one of the years does not have the data? We'll go into browse mode, and we'll see that we've got all of our data. We can tighten that up always by shrinking the layout part. We can also make these a little bit smaller, so let's go ahead and do that. We will select, we will make these, let's say 11 point, which are going to be a lot smaller. I can always choose to save my style. When I do that, I of course need to have one selected, which I'll do. Save changes to current, save changes to theme. As we're updating, it's always a good thing to do. And I will shrink this up as small as I want to have this. I'll use the arrow keys in order to move those up, and then I will drag on the body part and get things so that it's really tight, checking that this looks how I want it to look when I'm in browse mode. So now we've got the data pretty tight there, looking like we want to, but we want to add, or we want to break this down into all of its groups. In order to do that, we are going to add in sub-summary parts. Now there's multiple ways to add a part. We can go up to the area up here in the layouts menu. I prefer to use either the toolbar where we have the part tool where we can drag out a part, or right click and simply just do a part setup. Now this is the same menu option that we had in the menu command that we just saw. The reason that I like this one is FileMaker does not automatically shift things. When you're creating a report and you use this tool, you'll notice that you can drag in anywhere, even between these fields, and FileMaker will allow that part to drop, and it will literally chop your fields. So let's go ahead and make a sub-summary right here. Let's sort it by month. Let's say okay, and you can see what we got was we got a really funky thing going on there where it didn't exactly do what we wanted to do. So let's go ahead and undo that. Let's choose the option where we choose the part setup. And in this case, we get a different dialog where we can see that the header is locked, we have our body, and we're going to create a new part. So that part that we're going to create is going to be a sub-summary. Now the first sub-summary that we're going to use is the one based on the first sort that we're doing. Here's a key thing about reports. If you create sub-summaries that include data, let's say like a date or a value, that does not mean that you can't sort in a completely different order. You can. You can sort all of the data completely separate of how the report is going to render. In this case, it just so happens that I'm going to sort based on the year first. And by double-clicking, we can see that we get that situation where I talked about you have two options. You have an above and a below for any given field. So I can print above or print below. In this case, I want to choose above because I want the year to be above the actual body. So I'll click above, and we can see that that part gets added in here, and it's added in according to a preset height, and you don't control it, and it just adds it in automatically, which shifts your fields for you. So you don't have to play with guessing by dragging in that layout part. We'll go ahead and click done for right now, and we will simply drag this to make it a little bit bigger, and we will put the year up here at top. I did that with the option key by making a copy. I do not want this option of create a label. I'll turn that off and I'll say okay. I will also go over to my styling and take the opportunity to make it bold. So this is just a way to make things stand out. But when I go into browse mode, and when we sort this data, which I just brought up my sort, and we sort by year, and then we sort by month, by adding that, but selecting my month and saying I want a custom based on the month names, and sort that, what we're going to have is we're going to have our first level of grouping. And that's our grouping where we get everything in the year order. So I've got 2003, 2004, and so on. The next thing that I might want, if I had data that was date-based, would be based on the actual month. But in this case, the data is pretty much going to satisfy my needs in terms of having these broken up based on the year alone. So the next thing that I need in this case is I need some totals. I need some aggregate functions. And these are the summary values that we're going to add into our database no matter what it is that we are going to summarize. All right, so now I need to gather, or I need to show some data based on my the data that I have. As I scroll down, there's one of these that does not have, I think there we go, 2014 did not have the values for page visits. So we will use the page views so that we can actually have really consistent data. So the page views is a field that we need an aggregate value on. And all of FileMaker's summary functions, as I go into the manage database, are our aggregate functions. So we are going to put in a total. And one of the things that I like to do is I actually like to precede the names of my fields with whatever they're respective of. For example, if I have an unstored calculation, I will many times prefix it with the value of unstored. And it just turns out that I typically use a lower camel case approach, but for right now, we will put in a uppercase. So preceding the field with the word summary very clearly spells out what type of field this is. So I'm going to say summary total page views. I think that's what I'm actually building the summary based on. I will choose the summary field type. And now when I create this, I'm going to get all of FileMaker's aggregate options. They are everything right here, which makes sense. A total of, an average of, a count, a minimum, a maximum, standard deviation, fraction total of, and then list of. Now, depending on the function that you select, you can see that we are getting different options in this area right here. So if we pick a total of, and we see that we do not have data that will give us what we want, page views, that is because we cannot total based on a text field. So clearly we need to go set these into the right format. So we're going to have to back out of this. This is why we have our raw data over as the developer here. We can go to our page views, simply just choose on the field, change the field type to number. Let's go ahead and take the opportunity to do it for our page visits as well and set those. And over here, we go back to our field, and we're going to see that when we go into our summary, well, I have to type that again, summary total page views, and we are going to select the summary type of a summary, and we are going to create that right there. And we can see that quite clearly with the total selected now, we do have the option for our page views. In this case, we do not need running totals and we do not need a restart. Those options do make sense when you get to them. And also summarizing individually, these are just enhancements to what you need to do. When the report's not coming out how you want, that's when you know you're going to use those options. So I won't turn them on for right now. And with this summary field, we can now add it to our particular layout. So we can add the field into the sub-summary anywhere that we want. But remember, that option of having two sub-summary parts is where it pays off for us. Because when we look at this, we want to sub-summarize this report with the year up at the top, but then we typically look at a summary of numerical values at the bottom. So this means I need to go to my part tool again, part setup, and I'm going to create that part again. And it's going to be a sub-summary, again, based on the year. And this time we're going to say print below. So we can see that we've got the two parts now. We've got the leading and the trailing. Just for grins, we're going to try to create a sub-summary again. We're going to try to do it based on year. And we will say print below, and there is our result right there. This shows us we can only have two of any given field. And it's because we get one above and one below. So I'll go ahead and cancel that, but we now have one above and one below. So it is this one in below, as I grab the part, make it a little bit bigger, where I want to put the total of the page views. Now I'm just going to cheat right here by taking an option drag of that field, and rather than leaving the default field that FileMaker has, I'll choose this one. FileMaker does not have the label turned on, and I'll click OK. And for this one, I will also make it bold. I'll just do that with a keyboard shortcut, which is Command-Shift-B on the Macintosh here. So now when we go into browse mode, our data is still sorted. We can see right there, always looking up at the top. But what we have is we have a little bit of a disconnect here in terms of how our report is looking. And that's because our sub-summary parts actually are the same color. So we can see that when they merge here together, we don't get a clear distinction. That's just going to be a visual thing that we need to change in order to fix things up. We'll go to our sub-summary part, go over to our styling, set that to white, set the other sub-summary to white, And now we could just put in some things that sort of help us out. We can drag in some lines if we want to. I can drag a line right here all the way over, and then I can do the same thing for the part right here if I want to have that be at the bottom. So we'll get the line tool and we'll just draw a line right to the edge right there. And we'll select both of those lines, and we'll make sure and make them really dark here. Make them black lines. Now we'll go into browse mode and see if we're getting a result of what we want. And there we can see that for the most part, for 2003, we've got this number, which is a summary of all of these values. So you can see that the report is starting to end up exactly how we want. Now remember that notes field. We'll take a look at that, but I also want to point out that with a sub-summary report, there are times where you don't want to see the actual data. In this case, these numbers, maybe they're important to me if I want to see things on a monthly basis. And if I did want to create a monthly report where I saw a month to month and I was going to maybe create an associated graph, I would be able to create a separate report, which would be a month view, where this report is going to be a dedicated annual or by year view. You must know that in FileMaker, when it comes to reporting, the body, where previously I said you almost always want a body report, you don't have to have one. So I can delete this body part. So in this particular case, what I'm going to do is rather than getting rid of the body part right here, where I might want this, I'm going to go up to the File, Manage, go to my layouts. I'm going to take my report layout and I'm just going to duplicate it. I don't have the duplicate option with a right click, so I'll click the button that we have down here and duplicate that. I could open that, but in this case, I'm just going to switch to it using the menus right here. We have the exact same report. When I go into browse mode, I should be getting the exact same thing. There's my two values right there. And I will go into layout mode and we will get rid of the body by selecting it and hitting the delete. It'll ask us if we want to delete them. We delete it all. And now what we get is we're going to get a condensed sub-summary report. And we can see right here for 2003, we've got that value for 2004. And in this case, the lines wouldn't make sense. So I go back into layout mode. I will select my two lines there and there, get rid of them. I could just use the one sub-summary report, but I'm going to show you how we're going to put in those note values and look at the last remaining pieces to the puzzle to make a report work the way that we want when it comes to text that can be in a long field. So we'll take a look at that. But for right now, let's take a look at what we get as a result. I'll actually put one of those lines back because I want a given line to separate each year. I'm going to do that after the actual total value right there, so that when I go into browse mode, each year and its value is actually represented. And let's go ahead and take the time to clean up the number. If you don't know about it, in the fourth area in the inspector, that is where we are going to select, and I'll collapse everything here until we get to the data formatting. So whatever data you want to have in a particular format, that's where you're going to find this. With this field selected, on the number setting, as opposed to the date, the time, and the graphic or container, I'm going to choose to format my data as a decimal value. And I'm going to say I'm going to have a fixed number of values. I'm going to use the 1000 separator so that the data comes out looking nice. In this case, decimals don't really matter because we've got a whole number. I could go red for negative, and we have all kinds of options. But in this case, I should get a good output of what I'm looking for. I've got 38 million. Actually, the decimal is showing right there. I need to go over, select that field, and choose this option, do not display. So if you do have decimal values, you can still leave the decimals on, but if there are no decimals, you can simply turn that off. Go back into browse mode, and why is it showing those decimal values still there? I don't know why it is. Do not display if number is 0. Okay, we'll just turn that off right there because that's if the number is 0. I was a little confused right there. Forget the decimals. We won't use them. We can always get the result of what we're looking for in terms of the data. So let's take a look at the final part of reports. And if you have, this applies to if you have a form-based view report, something where you're including portals and other data, especially if you have long text data, you need to be aware of these few features. All right, so we're almost finished with our report, and it comes down to our notes field. So I'm going to go into browse mode, and because I can actually enter into the fields here on my form, I'm going to paste in my data, which is just some lorem ipsum text. Now, obviously, this text is being cut off, and let's put everything in the order or the place where I would want it to be. I'll put this all the way at the edge of my report where it would probably be, pull my line out to where that would be, and put my notes out as far as I can so that we're in the full width of the report. Even still, my data is not actually being shown. So I need this data to show. Let's say I had notes on each of the different years, just talking about information of varying lengths right here. Let's say that that one does not, and then this one, let's go all the way to even the first sentence where it is still getting cut off. This is where you need to take advantage of FileMaker's report features that deal with sliding. This comes into play more on your forms than it does on your list view reports, but regardless, we're on a list view report here, and we want to get all of the notes, but we want all of the data to properly show. Well, we go into layout mode, and what we have to do in this particular case is our sub-summary needs to be as large or as big as it needs to be for our accommodating text. So let me show you a very good trick in FileMaker where in layout mode, I can make this actually as long as I want. I could make this extend super far. The height of a layout in FileMaker can be extremely long. But if I know that I have an average of a maximum amount of data, I'm going to show you a trick that in layout mode makes it a little bit easier. We'll go into browse mode here. And I would have to scroll through all of my records in order to find, obviously, the largest field. I could also use a FileMaker calculation in order to find the length, using the length function of this particular field and put that into another field and then find the longest one. But knowing that this is the longest record, as opposed to, let's say, this record, if I was selected on this record and I'm in layout mode and I go up to the view menu, we have an option under the show menu of sample data. This is really helpful when you're creating reports or you're creating layouts where you need to size your fields accordingly. So by turning on the size sample data, we can actually see the data that's coming from the record that we were on when we left browse mode. So what we're going to do is go into browse mode, switch to my record that has the larger amount of data, and by being on this record, when we go into layout mode, we can see all of that data with that view option turned on. So now I can actually resize both this layout part and this sub-summary to an approximate value. Now again, if in the future this report might have even more text, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this even longer, or as long as I would anticipate for the report. Because now I'm going to use the option that allows me to make sure that the report is going to collapse down and it's going to consume all of this white space that we have between the end of the text and the next part. That's all going to be found in the position tab in the inspector. And as I collapse things down here to the auto sizing and the arrange, you can see that we have this option right here, sliding and visibility. The sliding and visibility controls what happens to fields and portals when you want to shrink space or if you need to shift things to the left. So we can see that we have the sliding left. In this particular case, I do not have any situation where I need to slide this notes value to the left. So I'm going to choose the sliding up based on, and then we have the options of all objects above, only objects directly above, and we have the also resize enclosing part. This is the option that I need to check right here that's going to say, For this sub-summary part, I want to resize all of this and shrink everything up. Now, it's not going to be something that we see with this selected. We can see that we're applying these options with this item selected. But when I go into browse mode, it's not going to be something that I'm going to see automatically. This is only going to appear when we are in preview mode looking at this report. And you can see that by going into preview mode, that's exactly what happened. Each of these parts were shrunk where the enclosing part pushed up, and now I get the exact report that I'm looking for. Let's go into layout mode and just add that one final touch. We'll call this something to the effect of total page views by year. And we will make this a little bit bigger. I'll do that with the keyboard commands and make it bold. And we will put this right over here. And this is going to give us, when we go into preview mode, which I did with Command or Control U, and it looks like I do need to get my text off here. I'm not accounting for margins a little bit. But there we go. Everything should be exactly as I want. In 2003, this is the result, and we can compare this year versus this year. One final thing, I've got to do it. I've got to make it the nicest it can be, and that is right align my number right there. And we'll align it with the text. But there we go. We get the type of report that we want, and we've covered all of the things that we need to know about generating reports within FileMaker. Sorting, the order matters. Using a value list if we need to control an explicit order, otherwise using a sort field that puts things in the proper order that we want. Then we've got the next part, which is our layout parts, which controls what's shown. We get sub-summary. Any given field can have a maximum of 2 sub-summary parts. And then finally, any text that we have sliding and visibility controls where we get to slide left or slide up based on either just directly above or all items above. And we also get to enclose the part so that our report comes out exactly how we want. So as always, I'd like to wish you much luck with your own FileMaker development. And until next time, much luck and happy FileMaking.
We hope you've enjoyed this video tutorial, and we'd like to say thank you for your subscription and your support. If you're not already a subscriber, head on over to www.filemakermagazine.com/subscribe for more information about the benefits of joining.